All right, Father Mitchell Bechtold here. Thank you so much. This video is for the ushers. It's a training video. It's not going to be overly refined, but I do tend to keep it as short and as concise as necessary. I've got Mike Jaworski here on camera just to make sure that I don't forget anything and also to be my cameraman, so thanks, Mike. Firstly, when it comes to when the ushers should arrive, gold star if you arrive at least 30 minutes early. And what the ushers will do is we'll have different points where they will be standing. So we're going to have six ushers appointed to every weekend, and we will have two outside here, and they will be there to open the door as people come on in so that they can limit their contact with any surface like door handles, things like this. And so you'll be there to open the door as they come on in. Then we will have two ushers here, and those ushers will welcome people to their seats. Now, and I was mistaken, I'm sorry, there will be 8 ushers, because we'll have the same thing on the west doors, if you want to pan over there, Mike. So on the west doors, on the outside doors, we will have 2 ushers there on the outside to open the door as they come in, and then we will have 2 ushers on the inside, and those ushers will seat people as they come in from the west side. We know that we need to make all of these entrances yet available because not only because of proximity, but also handicap accessibility and things like this. Now, as your people are coming in, social distancing is important. What I've been saying is that it's strongly encouraged, dare I say strictly enforced, that people social distance if they're not of the same household. Part of what this is not just the effectiveness of the practice itself, but also the image. So if we're, the governor or any critic of the church might say, well, why do those churches open? They said that they were going to social distance, and then we're all joking and smoking out front. Well, it's a bit of a problem. And so as people come on in, we usher them to their seat. Let's go ahead and up here, Mike. So say, for example, I'm walking Mike up to the front. Not all of these pews will be roped off. We're roping them off as we speak. So as an usher, maintaining my social distance from the people, I would welcome them to their pew, and they fill on in. If the family doesn't take a full pew, the idea is that they're supposed to be at least 6 feet from whoever's on the end. So maybe what you have is you have 5 or 6 people in one family in this pew, and then you have only 2 people over there. That's basically 6 feet. Maybe you have 4 people and 4 people. That's basically 6 feet. And we might even mark what 6 feet would be. I'd rather not. I think that would look very ugly. But the idea is use your best judgment. Maybe they'll take up a whole pew. Now, what is a household? A household would be those who are of the same family. So maybe you have somebody who comes in, and they're of 2 different households, but they're of the same family. They get together and work on a regular basis. I'm going to use the Sulbers as example. They're working together on the farm on a regular basis. They sit together in the same pew. They are, I would consider them of the same household. Now, neighbors, even just because you're seeing each other outside of Mass on a regular basis, rubbing shoulders, anything like this, not of the same household. And so it is our expectation that you would social distance those families. All right, so they all come on in, they're seated. We will have hand sanitizing stations at each of the entrances. You'll notice on the east end, hand sanitizer there. There'll be hand sanitizer as they enter in the other way also. And people are seated. They're strongly encouraged to wear masks on the weekend masses, not during the weekday masses. It's not required. It's not required. It's strongly encouraged, but not required. Ushers, strongly encouraged to wear masks. It's not required, at least I'm not requiring it. Just don't cough and sneeze on the people. I think they might feel more at ease in one respect if you wore a mask, depending upon the person. They might feel less at ease because it can look really intimidating seeing somebody with that mask on. And so use your best discretion. Mike, did we say we were going to require ushers to wear masks? And by the way, this isn't a decision that Mike has made or anything like that. He was just part of the planning process and helping me and a few others to field some ideas. Okay, so they come on in, they're seated, and now when it comes for the offertory, we'll still have the ushers come around with the long-handled baskets to take up the collection because that extends. If it were a basket that you'd have to hand around, we would not do that. They stand, kneel, do all that stuff. Now it comes time for communion. So let's walk around to this side here. The ushers will welcome the families out of the pew individually and side by side. So first off, the usher welcomes them out of the pew. Again, if they're of the same household, they're not expected to social distance. You'll notice these dots on the ground, these pieces of tape. Ideally, this is where they'd stand. But again, if they're of the same household, it's not my expectation that they social distance. But so you have this group come, and they're maybe a little bunched up. The next one, you'd have them wait until there's a clear enough distance, and then they would follow along. And communion will be distributed at the base of the sanctuary, and we'll have two main places where it's distributed. This is to avoid sort of that shoulder-to-shoulder, side-by-side procession down the center aisle. So you have this pew that's emptied, and then you would move back to, it would be this next pew right here. And you would welcome this pew out, and then you would move back to this next pew. I think it's this one right here. You would welcome this pew out. And then you would go the next one. Because that shoulder-to-shoulder, side-by-side procession, we want to avoid that on the side aisles too. All right. And over at St. Joseph Clarissa and St. Joseph Bertha, that won't be as much of an issue, but we will still process up the side. Again, social distance, that's 6 feet as they're walking up if they're not of the same household. So we get all done with communion. One concern that I want to address is people say, well, why are we doing that if people on that side are going to touch this side? We're taking the preventative measures that are reasonable. We can't prevent every possible point of cross-contamination. So if this is something that really concerns you, strongly encourage you to wear gloves, strongly encourage you to find a space where you wouldn't have to cross over, so maybe on one of these side aisles, or maybe even towards the front or something. All right, so we're all done with Mass now. You've been ushered in, you've been ushered up to the communion line. We're going to actually usher you out of the church also, so as to avoid any congestion. I expect, Mike, did we say anything about whether they'd be excused from the front, back? I would expect that we would begin basically at each point. So whoever's closest to the east door, they would start to be welcomed out of their pew that way, and whoever's closest to the west would be ushered out of their pew that way. We expect it to be a quick and easy process. Couple things to know. One, you use hand sanitizer at the beginning of your shift. You use hand sanitizer at the end of your shift. And also, if you see people congregating that are not of the same household, you have permission, and I ask you to please go up to them and remind them that we're to social distance. They might say you're a jerk or something like this. They might give you a look. That's part of your responsibility at this time, in part because of its effectiveness, in part because of the image. And you can find some funny way to do it, like you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here or something. Probably don't say that. People might not find it funny. And not to mention, we don't want to kick them out. So you usher them out, and then they leave, and be mindful of that outside space. As long as they're on campus, it's my expectation that they're social distancing. What have I left out? What do we do with the money when we collect the money? You collect the money, and then we will have one usher process up the middle aisle and place the basket at the base of the altar. So typically, they would come and they'd bring the basket to me, and then I would set it at the base of the altar. One usher will go and do that. There will be no procession with the gifts, so no bread and wine are brought forward, but the money is brought forward, placed at the base of the altar, and part of that is just security. It's a secure location where nobody would run off with it or quickly snatch it, whatever it might be. All right, what's my time at, Mike?
9:25.
Wow, we're way ahead of schedule. Is there anything I've forgotten?
I think so.
Okay. Maybe just one or two more things is we are appointing these trained ushers, those who have seen this video, to basically the next 2 months of being the usher, which means that every weekend you would be the ushers. And so here at Christ the King Browerville, we will have 10 ushers trained and 8 are scheduled each weekend. And we will make sure that there's a list so you know who the other trained ushers are. So say you need a weekend off, you can call them and see if they'll fill in for you that weekend so that you can get away. But rather than training multiple ushers in this practice, let's just get one core team that's really good at this. Over at St. Joseph Bertha, we're going to have, I believe, 4 ushers. And then over at St. Joseph Clarissa, I believe we're going to have 6 ushers. And yeah, no, I think it would be 6 for each one. So you'd have 4 active ones, and then you would have 2 on deck, 4 active, 2 on deck. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you have any other questions, call me personally, otherwise call the parish office and we'll try to respond to your questions as best as possible. God bless. Father Mitchell here again. One more detail that's very important is our numbers. So we're not to exceed 25% capacity of the space. Now, the mailing that you have received should give clear indication of what those numbers are. I believe for Christ the King, it's 125 upstairs, something like 75 downstairs, or maybe 50 downstairs. We'll have those numbers clear for you when you arrive. And then outside, we can have as many as 250 people gathered outside on campus. And so, what does it look like? Firstly, we fill the inside space, the upstairs. And so you usher people into their pews. Once you have filled the number of 125, or people are no longer able to social distance with the marked off pews, then we move downstairs. 125 is it. So maybe you filled 125 and there's plenty of places where they could sit and still social distance. I would say please don't exceed that number, because again, 25% of the capacity is the number that was negotiated on between the governor and between our bishop and the bishops of Minnesota. And so that's what the other houses of faith will be using, whether they're Zion Lutheran or whether they're Missouri Synod Lutheran, whatever it is, 25%. So then we would head downstairs and we will have the ushers that would have been up here up seating people. They will then direct people downstairs, and we will have chairs arranged for them more or less how they should be for social distancing. And once you've filled that number up down there, then people have been encouraged with the note that went home this week and been posted online that they could bring lawn chairs also, where they would be set up outside. Let's take a step outside here real quick. So my recommendation for Christ the King is that they would be seated in this shaded area. And what we will do is we will run a speaker out to the grassy area, whereby you will be able to audibly, actually let's walk over here away from the sound. You will be able to hear the Mass, you'll be able to audibly participate, but you won't be able to see what's going on. Now, we entertain the possibility of putting them over into Christ the King School. The problem with putting them there is then we have to get a direct feed, a live feed over to, let's get you in the shade, Mike. We have to get you a direct feed, camera feed, from here to the school. We could run a speaker even over there. I guess that's a possibility we'll have to consider if, say, it's raining outside. When it comes to St. Joseph Clarissa, St. Joseph Bertha, beyond the basement, there's no extra space except outside. So in case of inclement weather, then we just simply, you either sit in the rain or you sit in your car or you go find a different church. It's not something we want to do, is turn people away, which is why I've basically tried to provide this possibility. And it's something we might have to consider in the future is, do we need outdoor masses for the next 2 months or for the next 6 weeks or for however long this lasts? So, all right, again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to give the parish office a call and let us know, and we'll respond to them best we can. God bless.